There was a strange kind of restlessness in Salim's house. Today, the biggest good news of his life was about to arrive. His wife, Hina, was about to become a mother. This was their first light, and a wave of happiness was running through their hearts. Salim's mother, whom everyone in the neighborhood praised and lovingly called Amma, also had hope shining in her eyes today. After a few moments, a scream echoed in the house, and truly, Hina gave birth to a baby. But when Sakina saw the newborn, the ground slipped from beneath her feet. He was neither fully human nor any ordinary animal. Just looking at him made her soul tremble. Hina was lying unconscious. With trembling hands, Sakina picked up the baby and stared at him with shock and fear. When Salim came near the baby, his eyes widened. "Oh God, what is this?" he said, stammering. The baby's tiny hands and face were human, but his skin was dry and his legs looked as if they were the tail of a snake, like a crawling creature. Salim's mind became restless. He stepped back and sat down, leaning against the wall. When Hina regained consciousness, her eyes also fell on the baby. For a few moments she was stunned. Then a heartbreaking scream burst from her lips. "No! What is this? How is this possible?" In panic, Sakina wrapped the baby in a sheet, handed him to Salim, and said, "This is Allah's trust. There must be some reason behind this." While stepping outside, she whispered, "I have never seen anything like this before." Salim closed the door and sat beside Hina, saying softly, "Don't tell anyone. Hina, this is a test. We must be patient." There was no patience in Hina's eyes, only fear, shock, and a question screaming again and again. Why did this happen to us? Salim held her hands tightly, but his own heart was pounding uncontrollably. He couldn't understand anything either. The news spread in the neighborhood like wildfire. Salim had no idea what journey he had stepped onto. A path where the destination stood like repentance, sin, and the invisible court of nature. At every turn, new tests would appear. He didn't even know why this child had come into his home and what secret lay behind it. Salim was only 24 years old. The condition of the house was fragile. His mother was ill, his father had passed away, and the responsibility of his younger brothers and sisters was on his shoulders. One evening, at such a time, a wealthy man from the neighborhood came to him and offered a very profitable opportunity. "There's just a small job," he said. "The old bushes in that part of the forest need to be cleared. The land is useless. We'll clean it and sell it." Salim, crushed by poverty and searching for daily wages, agreed immediately at the mention of money. 3 days later, Salim reached the dense forest with workers. There were poisonous animals there too, but driven by the need for money, Salim ignored the danger. Despite hard work and sweat, the forest was not clearing quickly. Salim thought, if things continued like this, it would take months. Right then, an idea struck his mind. Why not set it on fire, he thought. Everything would burn to ashes, and the cleaning would be done. But he did not think that other lives also lived in the forest. He set the fire. Trees and bushes all turned to ash, and no one accounted for the suffering of those animals. The entire area was filled with smoke. The air carried only the burning smell of fire, and the ground was chaos everywhere. Birds sitting on trees were falling, trembling in pain. Animals were running across the land, no way out, no shelter. In the middle of this chaos, from the flames of the burning forest, a giant serpent emerged. The same serpent that villagers worshipfully called Nagbaba. Half of its body was burned. There was pain in its eyes, but also a human-like plea. "Put out the fire." Then its gaze met Salim's. That moment felt as if time had stopped for Salim. His heart sank. The serpent's eyes were saying something. Maybe a punishment, maybe a secret. Those few seconds of silence became the price of a lifetime. Salim lowered his eyes and walked away without looking back. 4 days later, the forest had turned into ashes. Salim worked hard to clean the area and took his share of money. The first thing he did was get his mother treated, and with the remaining money he started a small business. Life looked prosperous, but the night still burned. Every night the same dream. The same forest, the same smoke, the same serpent staring at Salim's suffering. Every morning Salim woke drenched in sweat and told himself, maybe this is the curse of that serpent. He looked toward the sky and whispered, "O Lord, if this is my punishment, I accept it, but forgive my son." Time passed and a son was born. They named him Rayhan. Happiness returned to the home, but a strange silence settled in Hina's eyes. She was a mother, but something inside her had broken. Whenever she looked at Rayhan, an unspoken fear surrounded her. The battle between motherhood and fear was clearly visible on her face. Salim made up his mind. He must protect Rayhan from the eyes of the world. No doctor, no priest, no one would be shown the baby. He kept repeating, "This is a test. We must pass it with patience." But that patience was now eating his soul. One night Salim woke up suddenly. Rayhan was not on the bed. He was crawling on the floor, but not like a child. His movement was steady, frightening, and serpent-like. Salim's hair stood on end. He gently picked Rayhan up and placed him on the bed. By then, Hina woke up. "Where was he?" she asked, her voice trembling. Salim remained silent. The next day, Hina's mother came, insisting to see her grandson. Salim wrapped Rayhan in a sheet and showed just one glimpse. Ami's face turned pale. Her voice trembled. "This child does not seem worldly." From that day on, Salim allowed no one to enter the house. The home had become a prison. And the prisoner was not only Rayhan, but the entire family. Time passed. Rayhan grew, but something else grew with him. His tail, his green eyes, and his silence. He never cried, never laughed. No hunger, no pain, only a face with a cold, still gaze. Hina said, "This child is strange, Salim. He neither cries nor smiles. Day by day, he is becoming more frightening." Rayhan was now 3 years old. Sometimes he would sit silently in a corner for hours. Sometimes he would suddenly start crawling, exactly like a snake. His nails had become sharp. His skin had turned dark and rough. Every night, Salim would fall into prostration. "O Allah, have mercy." But in his heart, the same one question always echoed. Is this child good? Is he truly human? One day, Hina was feeding Rayhan. Suddenly, Rayhan dug his teeth in, straight into her arm. Hina's scream echoed, "Ah, Salim, Salim." He came running. Hina's blood was flowing. He applied ointment. Hina was trembling. Both of them were looking at each other. In their eyes there was only one question, whose answer perhaps only Allah knew. Was Rayhan the mark of that curse, or the shadow of some sin? Salim knew there is something that carries more of a snake's inheritance than a human's. After that night, Hina's world began to shatter from within. She would often wake up at midnight and keep staring at Rayhan. Sometimes with fear, sometimes with pity. Sometimes with that question that echoed in her heart every day. Why did this happen to my child? Now when Salim saw her awake like this, he could not say anything. He just remained silent, perhaps because now he too had no words left. Slowly, talks began to spread in the neighborhood. Children started claiming that they had seen Rayhan peeking through the window at night. Some people said strange sounds came from the house, as if a snake was hissing, and then fear spread its legs. Neighbors would tell their children, "Do not go near Salim's house, something frightening lives there." When Salim heard all this, he almost stopped going outside the house. Now he had shrunk within his own walls. One day the mosque's imam, Maulana Jalil, met him. He asked Salim, "Is everything fine?" Salim told a slight lie. "Yes, Maulana Sahib, the child is ill, please pray." Maulana said in a soft tone, "One should give thanks for Allah's blessing, son. If there is illness, then getting treatment is obligatory." Salim lowered his head, but from inside his heart trembled. He knew the truth could not remain hidden for long. The day the truth came out, people would see Rayhan not as a human, but as some terrifying creature. That night, when everyone had slept, Salim quietly went into Rayhan's room. The room was dim, but Rayhan's green eyes were shining in that darkness like two burning lamps. Salim froze for a few moments. Then, gathering courage, he stepped forward. He held Rayhan's small hand. At that very moment, tears came from his eyes. He decided in his heart, now he would not fear his son. He would not hate him. But fate was perhaps preparing some other turn. A few days later, black clouds covered the sky. A strong storm blew and then torrential rain. Lightning was roaring. Suddenly a sharp flash happened. Salim jerked awake from sleep. Hina's scream echoed. Salim ran. The door was open and Rayhan was missing. Salim searched for him like a madman throughout the house. The room, the kitchen, the backyard, nowhere was he found. Finally, he reached the old storage room. There, Rayhan was sitting on the ground. His body now looked bigger than before, and his eyes were burning as if fire had caught inside glowing embers. He was screaming in some strange language, a voice so heavy that the walls were trembling. Hearing his scream, the whole village was shaken. People began peeking through their windows. Hina reached the doorway, and the moment she saw Rayhan, she screamed, "Ya Allah! What sin have we committed?" Salim's feet felt as if they were sinking into the ground. In that very moment he remembered everything, that burning forest, that writhing serpent, and the curse he was given in exchange for his helplessness. He muttered in a trembling voice, "This is the same ash that is now falling from our roof." He ran and tried to lift Rayhan. For the first time he held his son to his chest. Tears were flowing from both their eyes, from Salim's, from Hina's, and then a miracle happened. Rayhan, who had never cried, began to cry. In his sobs, it was as if humanity had returned. That night Salim made a decision. He would no longer run from the truth, no matter how frightening it was. But the morning knocked with a new fear. Now the entire neighborhood was talking about Rayhan. "He's a jinn. Someone has done magic on him. It's revenge from a past life." Such whispers had spread in every alley. A few days later, a white car stopped in front of Salim's house. Some officers stepped out, health department, social workers, and 2 policemen. An officer knocked on the door. "We have received information," he said. "There is a child here who is not normal. We need to take him to the research center. His examination is necessary." The color drained from Salim's face. He said, "He is my son. How can you take him?" The officer said in a strict tone, "Look, let us do our job. That child could be a danger to the entire village." At that moment, a staff member walked toward Rayhan's room. As soon as he tried to touch Rayhan, Rayhan lunged with lightning speed and his claw struck the staff member's chest. The man fell to the floor. "Rayhan!" Salim shouted. "Stop, my child!" His voice was trembling, but for the first time there was no fear, only love. Rayhan's eyes met his father's. There was pain in them, not anger. The officer quickly prepared a sedative injection. The injection was administered, and within moments Rayhan's eyelids grew heavy. Hina grabbed Rayhan into her arms tightly. Her screams echoed through the entire neighborhood. "Ya Allah, save my child!" She collapsed to the ground, her sobs refusing to stop. Salim stayed silent, his eyes wet. He kissed Rayhan's forehead, as if that one kiss carried all his pain and all his regret. Then with a heavy heart, he nodded, signaling the staff to take the child away. Rayhan was locked inside a cage-like box. The door slammed shut, and the car disappeared into the darkness. That very night, Salim and Hina left their home, The home where laughter once echoed now turned into a tomb of silence. When the neighbors saw the next morning, the house was deserted. No one went there for days. People began calling it the cursed house. Children were warned to stay away from it. "Don't go through that alley," they said. "There are jinn living there." Far from the city, at the edge of a small village, Salim and Hina found an old, worn-out house. That became their new shelter between broken walls and the ashes of their memories. Meanwhile, Rayhan was now in the research center. A team of doctors was examining him day and night. He was 5 years old, but his body had developed like that of a 10-year-old child. His tail had grown longer and heavier, his skin had become tough, and in his eyes remained that strange green glow. The most shocking thing was that he was completely silent. He didn't talk to anyone, no smile, no scream. But the moment a flame appeared in front of him, his entire body trembled. Sometimes his eyes narrowed, his breathing sped up, as if some old memory had ignited inside him. One day the center's nurse noticed that when the morning sunlight entered the room, Rayhan closed his eyes and bowed his head. The doctors performed psychological tests, but no answer was found. The child was a link to some deeper mystery. Meanwhile, Salim's nights once again grew restless. The same dream returned again and again. That burning forest, that smoke-filled sky, and that giant serpent writhing in the ashes. Every morning Salim woke with wet eyes and said, "Ya Rab, if this child is the atonement of my sins, I accept it. But if this is a sign of your wrath, then give me the strength to see it as your mercy." Just some days after that prayer, a call came from the center. "You must come immediately." When Salim reached the research center, there was chaos everywhere. Doctors were running. Machines were beeping, and a bright light was coming from one of the rooms. Salim rushed inside and froze. Rayhan was connected to machines. Red lights were flashing all around, but his body was emitting that strange light, as if a new life had awakened inside him. The doctors were shouting, "We are seeing some unusual energy in his veins. We've never seen anything like this before." Salim's heart stopped for a moment. He ran to Rayhan and placed his hand on his head. "Rayhan, my son, Abu is here." Suddenly that light grew brighter. The windows began to shake. The machine shut down, and for a moment everything froze. Then silence. Rayhan's eyes slowly opened. There was no fear in them now, no mystery, only peace. In a soft voice he said, "Abu." Salim's breath nearly stopped. Rayhan said, "That serpent is not in pain anymore." Salim shivered. You know him?" Rayhan gave a faint smile. "He wasn't dead, Abu. He was just waiting for someone to admit their mistake. He said that when a human accepts his sin, a curse turns into a prayer." As he said this, tears fell from Rayhan's eyes. But those tears were human. His skin, which was once rough and serpent-like, was now soft. The doctor stood frozen, witnessing a miracle unfold before their eyes. Salim collapsed to the floor. In his sobs there was relief, repentance, and gratitude. "O Allah, you are the one who shows mercy. You have accepted my repentance." Hina reached the research center a little while later. In front of her stood her son, yes, Rayhan, but now his face looked human. She walked forward with trembling steps and without thinking wrapped him in her arms. Tears were running down her face, but there was no fear in them anymore. There was only relief. It was a mother's victory. Salim felt in that moment that all the terror, sin, and curse had been left behind. What remained now was true motherhood and the power of repentance. But destiny does not forgive anyone so easily. Suddenly, the entire lab alarm went off. Doctors came running. "His body temperature is rising too fast. Something is happening inside." Salim's heart pounded. He grabbed Rayhan's hand. Rayhan smiled. In his eyes there was no fear anymore, only peace. "Abu," he said softly, "let me go. That serpent who had been suffering for centuries is finally at peace. But a part of him still remains inside me. If I live, that curse will return." Salim shook his head violently. "No, son. I can't lose you again. I've lost everything. I won't lose you." Rayhan's smile grew deeper. "You taught me how to be human. Now let me give peace to humanity." These were his last words. Suddenly a bright white light burst out of his body, so bright that the entire room drowned in it. Machines shut down, walls trembled, and then silence. When the light faded, Rayhan was no longer there. Only a thin layer of ash remained. Salim, with trembling hands, began to gather the ash. In his palms it felt as if Rayhan's smile was still alive. Hina collapsed right there, unconscious. The doctors were discussing among themselves. This is an energy release phenomenon. But Salim knew this wasn't a scientific reaction. It was the release of his son's soul. That night, above the research center, a strange glow appeared in the sky. People said it was a meteor. But Salim knew. It was Rayhan, now a part of the heavens. Months passed. Salim and Hina left the city and settled in a village. They opened a small school. Teaching children, smiling, life had given them another chance. The forest on the edge of the village, once dry and lifeless, had become green again. Birds had returned with their songs. One day, a little boy came running. "Master G, there's a snake sitting under the tree, but it doesn't bite. It just watches us." Salim smiled. "Come, show me." He went to the tree. A beautiful black cobra sat coiled beneath it. In its eyes was the same light, the same peace that once belonged to Rayhan. Salim bent down and whispered, "Your trust has returned to me, my friend." The cobra slowly slid away into the roots of the tree. That night Salim said to Hina, "Did you see? He forgave us." Hina's eyes filled with tears. And Rayhan. Salim looked toward the sky. One star was shining brighter than all the others. He is there. He taught us that no matter how big the sin is, if repentance is true, even God forgives.